in this webinar on unlocking new opportunities, exploring the credit transfers with IMU Pharmacy degree to New Zealand. I think together with me today, I have two speakers for you. I have Associate Professor Dr. Dinesh Kumar and also Professor Tyndall from University of Otago, who will be exploring the insight on credit transfer pathway to New Zealand pharmacy degree. And of course, in this talk itself, we will be discussing a little bit about the benefits and possibility for pharmacy students' career prospect that awaits for all the graduates. And before I'm going to start the webinar session and all the talks, I would just like to run through with you some of the housekeeping rules. Okay, can I have the next slide? Okay, so just be reminded that you are, at the moment, we have muted all your microphone. Okay, so if you have any questions, any feedback, please use the Q&A panel. Okay, and of course, this live webinar will be recorded. Okay, all right, so without further delay, I think I will introduce our first, who's going to speak first, which is Associate Professor Dinesh Kumar. All right, he's the Senior Lecturer Program Directors of IMU Pharmacy Program, and he has about over 15 years of work experience in academy and of course research and pharmacologist. Okay, Dinesh, are you ready? Yeah.
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so a very good morning to all of you who are gathered here, okay, to listen this particular webinar. So we want to thank you for taking this opportunity to come all the way to listen to this webinar. So before I pass on to the main speaker, I would like to briefly introduce about the profession of pharmacy and as well as basic details about the pharmacy profession in IMU. So generally, the profession of pharmacy is it's a very noble profession. Pharmacists are generally, as you know, if you go to any medical shops or medical stores, you see that these are people who actually dispense medication. So pharmacists are they're medication experts who prepare and dispense prescriptions. They ensure the medicines and doses are correct. They also prevent harmful drug interactions. On top of that, they also counsel the patients on how exactly the drug or the medication needs to be taken or on the safe and appropriate use of the medication. So this is in a nutshell, the profession of pharmacy. Next slide, please. So to give you a brief introduction about the IMU Bachelor of Pharmacy Honors Program. So it was in 2004, the IMU B.Pharm Honors Program was launched with the inaugural intake of 40 students. Then in 2009, we had the graduation of the pioneer cohort in this specific program. And the same year 2009, we received the accreditation from the Malaysian Pharmacy Board, which runs until today. In the year 2011, we began partnership with the University of Otago, New Zealand, and the University of Tasmania, Australia. So today, we are one of the most established and largest private school of pharmacy in Malaysia with close to more than 2,000 B.Pharm alumni. So this is a brief introduction about the B.Pharm program in IMU. Now, I would like to highlight on the specific purpose of this webinar. One of the highlights of the B.Pharm program is our credit transfer option, which we provide to students to the University of Otago, New Zealand. So this is one of our highlights of the program, and this is one of the credit transfer options which we currently have with IMU. In this specific credit transfer option, students, if they are interested, obviously they have to fulfill all the requirements and merit. And if they enter this year, the first 2 years, they do the studies in IMU. So once they complete the first 2 years, then the last 2 years of their program of study, they do in the University of Otago in New Zealand. So there are many benefits of this specific pathway or this specific track, because when students enroll this program, they have the opportunity to work as a pharmacist in New Zealand. And on top of that, say in case if the student wants to return back to Malaysia, they are also eligible to work in Malaysia, provided they comply with the requirements of by the Pharmacy Board of Malaysia. So this has been one of our key highlights in the past few years. We had several students who had taken this opportunity and they have gone over to New Zealand to complete their studies. And then you also do have some people, some of the students who have also managed to find a job in New Zealand. So it's actually a very promising option. So I think with that, I conclude my introductory remarks. I think now Prof. Joel Tyndall is here. He will give you the main outs about this particular option. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dinesh. I think before Joel Tyndall explained to you a little bit about University of Otago, I'd just like to introduce him briefly. Okay, Professor Joel Tyndall is a chemist, actually. He's a medical chemist, and of course with expertise in drugs recovery using computation methods. He's currently the Associate Dean of International for Division of Health Sciences in University of Otago, and he teaches into Bachelor of Pharmacy and also Bachelor of Pharmaceutical Science at Otago. So he's going to give you a little bit more further insight into the possibilities of these credit transfers in University of Otago. Okay, Joe, are you ready? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Pacey, and thank you, Dinesh, for the introduction. And thank you, everyone, for turning up, and a very good morning to you all. So yes, I'm here in Dunedin, down in the University of Otago, and just giving you a bit of insight into life at Otago and the transfer program with IMU to do pharmacy. So if you've had anything to do with the University of Otago, you're probably familiar with our classic clock tower building. Very, very beautiful, very nice old bluestone building where a lot of the the Vice Chancellor, etc., now are housed, and students they actually do go into the building behind, but there's a much bigger campus around, but that's one of our most famous buildings. So the University of Otago is in Dunedin in New Zealand, and you can see on the map over here that Dunedin is probably 2/3 of the way down the South Island of New Zealand. Dunedin itself is a university town. So by that, we mean the university is pretty much right in the center of town, and it is a big focus of the city. So Dunedin is not a big city, population of about 125,000 people, and roughly 20,000 of those people are students. We have a vibrant residential student community, and it's easy to meet people, and you're living basically right on campus. Everything's only a walk away. And the students are generally called scarfies, and that's goes along the lines of students going along to watch the local rugby union games and wearing the scarves. And as I've said, students live close to the university, very close indeed. So these are just a couple of the photos in and around Dunedin. So this is bottom right is on campus, just coming from some of the student quarters, past the Centre of Innovation. At the top right, we have the centre of town in the Octagon, and that's the town hall and one of the churches in town. Top left, there is a vibrant cafe and coffee culture in Dunedin, so you won't go without coffee if that's what you like. And we're very close to beaches as well, very good surf beaches if that's what you're into or what you'd like to learn about. So Dunedin itself, again, I've said it's a compact city. Accommodation is very central to the city as well as shopping. It's within walking distance of the campus. The city depends on our students. We have about 20% of our population, as I've said, are students. So it's a vibrant young community. The city itself was originally of Scottish heritage, and it's an ecotourism centre. So there's many different opportunities to go out and see and to look at nature. What we see on the right is one of the fjords at Milford Sound over in Fiordland, which is an amazing place, and it's a wildlife sanctuary. And so Dunedin is an excellent base to explore the scenic South Island. So like any university, we don't like to promote ourselves. Otago University was the first university established in Dunedin. We have over 150 clubs and societies, and I'll mention that a bit later. We are ranked in the top 1% of universities worldwide, and our pharmacy school is also high up there. So how does a partnering program work? Well, as Dinesh has already mentioned, you complete 2 years at IMU and then transfer directly into the third year at Otago, and also complete complete your degree in 2 years. After 4 years of study, you'll graduate with a Bachelor of Pharmacy from Otago. In order to register and work as a pharmacist, you then need to complete a 1-year internship. And that's 1 year's paid employment. And that's not actually run by the School of Pharmacy, that's run by the Pharmaceutical Society of New Zealand. But that's easy to get into. And you would also need to source that internship yourselves. So you complete a 1-year internship, and after that, you become a registered pharmacist in New Zealand. And this qualification as a registered pharmacist with a Bachelor of Pharmacy from Otago is a recognised degree of the Malaysian Pharmacy Board. So just some of the details. We commence our semesters, and particularly third year, in February. You would start your course by a 2-week bridging course, which just introduces you to New Zealand and also introduces you to pharmacy in New Zealand. 2 years after that, you graduate after arriving in New Zealand in December. And our semesters run from February to June for our first semester, and semester 2 is July to October. So there is a little bit of time off to prepare yourself to come to New Zealand once you finish your 2 years at IMU. What will you study? So at Otago, at least, you do a lot of the fundamental sciences in the first 2 years and then move into the first integrated module. Some of that module, the teaching in that module, you have already covered at IMU. So therefore, you're ready to transfer into third year. So we look at full integrated modules, integrated teaching into respiratory, cardiovascular, renal disorders, endocrinology. So all of the different body systems that are associated with medicines. In the fourth year, it's more of a capstoning year. So it brings all of these together. There's 2 separate electives. One's a research elective. We have a pharmacy practice leadership and management paper, and that's related to running your own pharmacy. In New Zealand in particular, community pharmacies are a business. So there's some teaching around that. You also have a structured practical experiential program whereby you have at least two rounds of 4 weeks going to a different hub around New Zealand, out into pharmacies, out into medical practices, and working with other medical practitioners. Just some pictures of our students in Dunedin. We can have a lecture theatre here, and as everything is walking distance, some students choose to use their skateboards too. So some of the key questions: how much does it cost? So international fees for 2024 are currently set at $46,000. So they are potentially likely to increase. This picture over here is showing one of our teaching staff teaching students about vaccinations, which is obviously a very important skill, as pharmacists are able to vaccinate in New Zealand. Also, living costs. How much will it cost? So probably up to $25,000 down here, depending on which type of accommodation or which lifestyle you wish to lead. And generally, we have our students going into shared flats, and we can go into details of any of those at a later date. So how do you actually learn? Well, as I mentioned, we have lectures. So this is very didactic, similar to this position here, where I'm talking to you, and you would learn about what I'm talking about. These are generally 50 minutes in length. We also have in pharmacy workshops or tutorials. So there's small group teaching sessions led by a tutor for discussion. Excuse me. Sorry, a bit of the winter chills. We also have a very helpful international office whereby we have international student advisors dedicated to looking after all of our international students. So they provide a home away from home. It's a very special group of compassionate Otago staff members dedicated to helping you with a wide variety of issues. I've also mentioned early on, alluded to the fact that we have our own Otago Malaysian Students Association. So they're a very good community. We have currently 12 pharmacy students in that group, and there's about 100 students in that group, and they have a lot of different events, and you can find them on Instagram and Facebook as well. So student services, on top of the international office, there's the information services building, student mentoring program, international orientation program, student learning center. We have a dedicated student health and counseling service. So if you are ill, there is a student health service available. We have 24-hour campus watch, so security patrols. And one of the good things that we do have at Otago is our UniBuddy system. So if you don't want to ask me any questions or reach out to any of the staff at IMU, you can contact these students here at Otago who are international students who've been studying for a number of years, and you can ask them questions about what's it like. Is it really as warm as they say it is? Does it snow? Etc. etc. So the UniBuddy system is a very good option. These are just some pictures of our student services building. So this is inside our library, which I believe has also won some awards. And this is some of the private, rentable study spaces. I used to say that's where we used to store our students at night. So that's all from me. I believe we have open to question and answer sessions, and I'll hand it back to Pacey.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. Yeah. Okay. Right. I think one of the common questions that usually students would ask for is about support when they first or on the first transfers to University of Otago. Could you perhaps give us a little bit insight into that?
Certainly. So our international office particularly have on the first or second day that you start, it's not formal teaching, it's a bridging course, we have an international orientation. So that's basically introducing you to the university, to the campus, welcoming you, introducing you to the international office staff, and also just doing some minor admin with respect to visas, making sure that we have copies of the visas, etc. So, and also setting up all of the details that you need to access the information for study. So we use our online learning system is Blackboard, so you'll be able to access that once you're enrolled formally. The international office provides ongoing support. Also within the School of Pharmacy, we have our own student support staff who are lecturers also, so you'll be familiar with who they are. We have a dedicated international student support officer.
All right. Dinesh, is there anything on IMU side that would be preparing the students for University of Otago?
Generally, from IMU side, yes, we do prepare the students. Basically, we give them briefing about what exactly they can expect when they reach Otago. So, and they also get the opportunity to complete because the gap what they have after they finish their year 2 is just ideal to complete their rest of the MPU programs as well. So students are guided sufficiently, and even if they have anything to clarify, they are encouraged to come and meet us, say in case whatever the questions they have, and we get them clarified. So students are well supported in all aspects before they actually fly over to New Zealand. And many a times what happens is that students, they themselves, they get in touch with their seniors and get to know most of the details what are required before they. So in that way, we also have like how Prof. Joel had just mentioned, the UniBuddy system. So I think it's very much helpful. So I think in terms from a perspective of a student, I think they are very well supported.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, so for those of you who are still in the who present today, just remember, if you have any questions, please add on into the Q&A panel. Okay, I think there's a lot of interest regarding working in New Zealand now. Okay, I think we have questions asking, Joe, do you know what is the rough starting salary for pharmacists in New Zealand?
Yeah, so broadly, so I mentioned the intern year, so that's effectively your 5th year. I understand, so that is definitely a paid year. It does vary between pharmacy, but I would say broadly, an educated guess is 45 to 60,000 New Zealand dollars per annum. Outside of that, once you're registered, sort of within 5 years, you can be earning between 75 and 100,000 New Zealand dollars per year.
Thank you, Joe, for that. Yeah. Could you give us a little bit idea, like what would be the requirement normally for these credit transfer students to register themselves in New Zealand?
So there is no different requirements for international students. They have to complete the intern year. There are some exams associated with that also. That's run by the Pharmaceutical Society of New Zealand. So we try and prepare the students to enter into the internship year. They do, I understand, take some OSCEs, some oral exams based around those, oral clinical based exams, and we provide those for our exams as well as training as well. But yeah, as a graduate from the Bachelor of Pharmacy in Otago, they're eligible to enter the internship program.
I mean, from your experience, are there any particular challenges that normally students or graduates face there in trying to register themselves?
Not that I'm overly aware of. The only thing that differs with particularly our IMU students who come to New Zealand are the fact that they arrive in third year, and students have been here in second year doing pharmacy specifically. So, but also at the same time, within third year, the students will interact with pharmacies, go to pharmacies for placements along those lines. And that's where it is a good opportunity for students to identify internships. Having said that, other pharmacies advertise for internships as well. So there's plenty of opportunities. And in our experience, I must say, the majority of our IMU students have been fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, sharing from my experience, I used to have a few mentees who have actually transferred to University of Otago, and I know they all work in New Zealand at the moment. Yeah, so from my understanding, I think there are processes to follow and all that, but having said, I think finally most of them managed to actually secure an internship, and of course some of them actually continue to work there. Yeah. We have a question also asking whether is it possible to work in Australia if you have registered yourself in New Zealand?
The simple answer is yes, currently. I understand it's effectively required to have approximately 4 weeks of supervised work to ensure that you're adhering to the Australian protocols, which are very similar to the New Zealand protocols. The only minor differences would be around if there were any differences in funded drugs or drugs that are used versus drugs that are not. We have had a large number of students go to Australia. That's fine.
Yeah. If I understand correctly, it's the same pharmacy board that actually govern both New Zealand or Australia, or they actually work together. Is that how it works?
They work together. There's 2 separate boards.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So basically, I think as mentioned, yes, it's possible, but there are obviously extra requirements, as you mentioned, if they wish to work in Australia if they are already a registered pharmacist in New Zealand. So that's possible to be done.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar to if students wish to return to Malaysia, they need to adhere to the appropriate legislation and understand the law of that country.
Yes, yeah. I think at the moment, if anyone who are registered already in New Zealand, and if they come back to Malaysia and they wish to work in Malaysia, they would usually write to the pharmacy board to request for further information whether they need to redo their internship program. I think a lot of time in Malaysia now, they might exempt them from certain internship program again, but they might emphasize that it's a must that they probably will have to redo the exam again. There is basically like a pharmacy law paper that they will have to pass, and a lot of time, I think at university side, we sometimes run workshops and courses to help the students to ensure that they, pass through the exam, smoothly in that sense. Yeah. So hence we do have some, graduates or even those who have already gone to New Zealand and registered themselves coming back and with that. But again, I think if any one of the participants here, for your information, I think this is something that you not need to worry yet. So at any point, if you decided, after completion in New Zealand and you wish to come back to Malaysia to work, you can always write back to IMU and we will be able to give you a little bit of advice on the, on going through that processes and perhaps direct you to some relevant people. Okay. All right. And of course, we have questions about, of course, the prospect of pharmacy profession in Malaysia. All right. Okay. Perhaps I will share a bit from my point of view. I think, yes, I think while there are a lot of concern about, no jobs and concern about saturation and all that, there is always jobs in pharmacy in Malaysia. At the moment, I mean, to be very honest, I hardly hear any of our graduate actually couldn't find an internship position for the past 1 or 2 years already in that sense. So I think there is still jobs available around. And at the same time, of course, globally, we see many reasons why, healthcare professionals are still in need. Example, aging population, more and more towards personalized medication and things like that. So the demand for healthcare providers are still there, basically, so I'm sure that applies to New Zealand as well, isn't it, Joe? What do you think? Yeah,
it's a very similar scenario. There's always a demand for pharmacists. At one stage, maybe a year ago or so, there wasn't such a huge demand, but it has been put back on the list where we are looking to employ pharmacists from overseas, I understand.
Dinesh, do you have anything to add to that, or?
Yes, I totally agree with both you and Joel, because even though outside there are these concerns regarding this shortage, in terms of jobs, but still the demand is there, especially after I personally think that the issue came when people faced with shortage of PRP places. I think now that is actually sorted out because of the government's initiatives with the liberalization, where students can go over to industries and do their PRP. They can go into universities. Even IMU is one of the locations where students can do their PRP. So I think now that specific concern is, I think, much minimal. Like what Pacey mentioned, actually, so the demand is still very high, and there are new hospitals every time now and then opening up. So in terms of demand, yes, we still have plenty of options. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Malaysia is yet to, or I think this year it will hit the required ratio of population to a pharmacist. I'm pretty not sure about the exact figures, but until last year it hasn't reached yet. So that means there's still much scope for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to be exact, or giving everyone an idea, is that I think from our last survey, I think the last cohort that we had, most of them, on majority, 80 to 90% of them, have got job or internship positions secured between 3 to 6 months. Yeah, so I think there were some remaining who have not applied for their own personal reasons and all that. So usually at the point that maybe before they have completed, the universities or our side, IMU would have given students some of the idea. But again, for those of you who are, let's say, decided that you would like to go to New Zealand, and you completed New Zealand, and if you decided to complete your course at New Zealand and then transfer back or come back to Malaysia to work, you can always write back to IMU, so we will be able to provide you with some information on going through the processes. Yeah. Okay. There was one question which is quite interesting, that I suppose the person is asking whether, while they are studying in New Zealand, are they allowed to actually work when they are there? Yeah.
So yeah, there's probably 3 different questions that I can answer. The first one is, are there any scholarships? There haven't usually been any scholarships, but next year, so students coming into University of Otago next year are being offered Vice Chancellor's scholarships, and they're up to $10,000 for international students. Beyond that, we are hoping that they will continue, but I don't know. Being able to work in New Zealand whilst you're here on your student visa, that is definitely allowable. Conservatively, I'd say 10 hours a week, but I think it might be actually up to 20 hours. But you are definitely allowed to work when you're here studying, so that you can actually get the whole Kiwi experience. That's a very good question.
Yeah.
The other question was, can I explain a bit more about the 2-week bridging course? So a little bit is about the pharmacy law. So the context is that students will come into the 3rd year program. So 3rd year of our program, and what we want to do is make sure that there are no gaps from anything that they might have missed in their 2nd year. So as I said, it's a little bit about New Zealand pharmacy, also a little bit about New Zealand and its culture. So it is a different culture. In addition, we have the indigenous people, Maori people here in New Zealand. So they have their own ideals around health. So we do a lot of teaching around that health as well. So teaching around their concepts around health, but also their health needs. So there's law, there's Hauora Māori, so that's the health of Māori and their attitudes towards health and family. Also a little bit about dispensing, just so that you're up to speed with the techniques that we'll be using in the 3rd and 4th year. In addition to that, there is a couple of lectures around culture, in particular language. So whilst we all in this webinar speak English, there's a few idiosyncrasies between both countries. So we talk about the Kiwi language, different to the Malaysian and Singapore language, La, and those things. So just a little bit of understanding those types of nuances. It's put down as 2 weeks. It's probably only 8 days, but it gives you a good opportunity to do that. At the end of that, we also induct you into our student brotherhood of pharmacy students with our white coat ceremony. So you become part of the student body.
I'm just very curious now, from your experience, how do the students blend, into the community or the students that's already in, because they join in from the, not on the first year, basically, or the middle of the course. Yeah. Any insight that you can share? Yeah.
Probably very little, because I teach predominantly into the 2nd year and these come into the 3rd year. However, having said that, students are allocated into 4 groups. So students will get to know the students in their own group quite well. So, and there's a lot of different student activities. So we have our own NZAPs, which is New Zealand Association of Pharmacy Students. So they get together and they have their own gatherings. It might be a meal, or they have sports days and get together in the evenings, and the study groups as well. So assimilation seems to be quite good from my understanding, although I am an old person, so I don't deal with them too much.
Yeah, I think for those of you, just for your information, as I know, we have actually quite many students who actually transferred to New Zealand and perform quite well. There are pretty much a lot of the high achievers that have done well similarly in Otago as well. Am I right, Joel? The students, some of them who actually done well in IMU and they transferred, they actually managed to do well, continue to do well in Otago as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a IMU student currently doing their PhD with us.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Yes.
There was one question. So one question around the clinical attachments. So there's a number of placements and attachments. There is a hospital placement, and I'm sure you'd understand there is only a limited number of hospitals in New Zealand, given we have a population of 5 million. So you may very well be posted to another hospital. For the placements which occur in 4th year, we do try and see if we can get our IMU students placements in Dunedin. But having said that, you may very well choose to or wish to go further afield, and there are options in Christchurch and Wellington and Auckland as well. So we can't guarantee you will stay in Dunedin. And I'm not completely familiar with the exact process, but there are options given to you.
Can I confirm that most of these placements are basically arranged by the universities?
Yes.
Right. Okay. And it normally happen in which year of the course?
So we have the 2 4-week placements in the 4th year, but we also have a rural placement and a hospital placement in the 3rd year. And I think there is a community placement probably in 2nd or 3rd year also.
Yeah. Okay. So if you have further questions, please just remember to keep posting on a Q&A. Perhaps another thing that normally we would be asked is, what is the international population crowd itself in Otago? I think people are more interested whether, about Malaysian population in certain sense. Yeah.
So I mentioned before with our Otago Malaysian Students Association, there is about 100 students who've chosen to join that society. There may be more. We have a very multicultural student population. International students, historically, we've had around 12 to 14%. Currently, I think we're at about 8% of our students are international students. But having said that, New Zealand is very multicultural. So you may think someone's from Malaysia or Southeast Asia, but they may have been born in New Zealand. So lots of different cultures in New Zealand.
And I remember you mentioned that we have one, credit transfer students who are currently doing PhDs at University of Otago at the moment. Okay. Basically, can actually the graduates of any kind pursue postgraduate studies is it how difficult or how easy for them to actually continue to do a postgraduate studies in New Zealand? Are there much opportunity for them in New Zealand?
So there is as much opportunity as there is for anyone. So I did allude to the fact that we have an honours program. It's an unusual setup. It runs in parallel with our normal Bachelor of Pharmacy program. Our honours program is generally designed to attract those students who are interested in research. So by completing the honours program, which is available to anyone, as long as they get the right GPA, they're eligible to enter a PhD. And what I always do with respect to recommending students is to complete your internship first, such that you can then work as a pharmacist. You're a qualified pharmacist from that stage, and you can also supplement your income working as a locum pharmacist when you're doing your PhD. From the context of professional pharmacy postgraduate qualifications, if you're practicing in New Zealand, there's every opportunity that you have to enroll in, I think we're doing postgraduate certificates, but definitely postgraduate diploma, and that can lead into a master's in clinical pharmacy. We're also developing a program. We have pharmacists prescribing in New Zealand, very similar to the UK. We've remodeled our system here, so it's going to be a shorter course than what it was. So there's opportunities at postgraduate level there.
All right. So this module itself is only for those that's completed pharmacy degree and graduate themselves. It's not actually for the bachelor students who are undergraduate students, isn't it? The prescribing course that you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So in New Zealand, just out of interest, is that do the pharmacists themselves sort of, do they get much advantage if they have already embarking on this type of courses?
It's hard to say. I think it'd be similar in Malaysia, that the pharmacy profession is moving a little, whereby there's more responsibility being provided for pharmacists by the government through funding, because particularly in New Zealand at the moment, GPs are under pressure. So pharmacists are able to assist with minor diagnoses, vaccinations, prescriptions, and the like. We have our own pharmacy clinic based at the university as well. So we have pharmacist prescribers there. So they effectively specialize in their own field of medicine. It's not being a practicing pharmacist, I'll just say that it's becoming more and more important in these areas, and it's going to develop further.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right. So if I'm just curious, does any one of the participants still have any questions? Okay, because okay, there's one more now. Can I know how long is postgraduate study visa?
So this has changed a little, but I believe after the bachelor's degree, it's 3 years, I believe.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So thank you everyone for attending today. So if there's no much question popping up in that sense, we're going to wrap up the session today. But just to remind all of you who are interested in IMU program, in credit transfers program, that we have IMU have an open day, which is on 27 August. All right, and the open day, of course, run from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at IMU Bukit Jalil campus. All right, and of course, if you are wanting to know more about the campaign itself, you can actually go into IMU website, okay, and search for the information for RSVP. So in the campaign itself, if you come in physically, you'll be able to see the campus. You'll be able to talk to lecturers as well, faculty members, to find out more about IMU Credit Transfers Program. All right. And of course, if you have further questions at any point, you could just write email to us as well. All right. So I take the opportunity, of course, to thank everyone who is present today, and of course to Joe and also to Dr. Dinesh, for giving us all the different insights and giving everyone an idea about the credit transfers program. Okay. All right. I think we shall end the session here. Thank you very much, everyone.